Good afternoon. My name is Michelle Lazama, CEO and President of NACME Incorporated. We're pleased to be on the campus of North Carolina A&T State University for our 2018 NACME Executive Sponsor Speaker Series. Today's topic is effective communications across generational lines, brought to us by Dow Company. Our moderator today is Simone Douglass. Simone is a junior mechanical engineering student from Columbus, Ohio. She currently serves as the membership chair for the National Society of Black Engineers, the community service chair for the American Society of Mechanical Engineers, and a College of Engineering ambassador. This summer, she will be joining Amazon as an analyst intern in Washington, D.C. Please join me in welcoming our moderator, Simone Douglass.
Hello, everyone. I first want to send so many thanks to NACME for coming to our institution this afternoon, spending time with us, and most importantly, for the relationships that you have helped build with us. Also, I would definitely want to thank Dow for their relationship with us and also their huge contributions to NACME as well. So as you may know, North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University is currently the largest producer of African American degrees awarded to engineers. Dow is actually one of the founders of the NACME Scholarship Program as well, and they definitely have had a huge relationship with students at North Carolina A&T as well, and many students have benefited from their internship and full-time opportunities. So this is awesome, and we just want to thank you again for all that you do for us. Okay?
Thank you.
All right, so we'll introduce ourselves now. I'll start. My name's Steve Westerman. I'm the HR Solutions Team Leader for Talent Lifecycle. So for us, that is our talent management and our talent acquisition organization. I've been with the Dow Chemical Company for 6 years, and I'm also the board liaison for NACME.
Hi, I'm Latharany Raby. I am currently serving Dow as the operations leader within our technical expertise support department, and I have a group that primarily focuses on the inspection and testing of fixed equipment in Texas operations.
Good afternoon, everybody, and I'm John Alfred Charas. I'm in our Advanced Analytics and Reporting group, and what I do is help our businesses make informed decisions. So think about our business intelligence and making sure that we make the right decisions to make sure that we're profitable.
Awesome. So just as a question to get things started, what do you prefer, text or email?
I would say it depends on the situation.
Okay.
But I'm good with text, first and foremost.
Awesome.
I am an email communicator primarily, but due to the nature of our job, most of our technicians are out in the field and will not always have access to a computer to be able to communicate, so we rely heavily on text message communication as well.
And since I'm in meetings most of the day, my phone is always off, so the best way to reach me is text.
Cool, very cool. So another question I have for you guys are, what are some of the top issues that have an effect on the workplace because of the multi-generational backgrounds that we see in the workplace?
Maybe an opportunity, I'd say. The largest opportunity I see due to the varying generations in the workforce is actually the need to accelerate the talent development to bridge the generational gap with experience. So I find that younger engineers entering into the workforce are given more opportunities to really show what you guys are made of. You'll be trusted with a lot more responsibility sooner in your career because there is a need to bridge the gap and broaden the expertise a lot earlier in your career.
Yeah, and just to add to that, just a couple of interesting dynamics that are going on in the workforce today. I think if you look at generations in the workforce, I think some of you probably know that there's up to 5 generations in the workforce today. That's pretty crazy because each one of those generations come with their own set of unique experiences that have kind of crafted who they are as people, and they also have their own types of unique I would say, expectations of the workforce and of companies. And for companies like ours who value the employee experience and making sure that every employee has the best-in-class employee experience with their company, all of those differences lead to a huge challenge for companies to overcome. In addition to that, I would say technology in the workforce is something that has changed immensely as well, and has changed the way that we communicate with each other and the way that we do work. Technology disruption has been huge just in your personal lives as well. I mean, if you think about your personal lives, you're connected 24/7. Companies are being challenged now to bring that same level of connectivity to the workforce because people are different. They want to get information at different times through different channels. And companies need to find a way to accommodate that to ensure that they're engaging their entire workforce. So.
And I'll just add that it just depends on knowing who your audience is, right? So I think you said millennials in the workplace, and Steve mentioned 5 generations in the workplace. Everybody interacts differently. There are people that still like to pick up the phone and call, so understanding who you're communicating with and where they fit in, and then communicating with them accordingly. So if somebody likes phone calls, call them when you need to. If I'm talking to Tini, I know she likes email, I'll send her an email instead. So it's very important that you get to know who you communicate with and approach it from that angle as well.
Awesome. So as a new hire, is there a specific time that you can think back to where you faced a specific issue or challenge that you remember going through?
As a new hire, I think I just jumped in. I'm one of the outgoing guys. So I remember as a new hire, I joined in, my manager just gave me a sheet and said, these are the people you need to get to know to be effective, right? So first of all, I had a manager that was willing to show me who the key stakeholders were and for me to have that dialogue with, because at the end of the day, you need to build teams to be able to communicate even when you don't have authority. So that was important for me to figure out the landscape, and then I think it took off from there.
Awesome.
I have a couple examples that I can share. I mean, the first one that I remember, I was an intern, and I was working in our talent management group, and I was making a presentation for one of our senior leaders. And my mentor at the time had given me a ton of coaching on how to actually craft a PowerPoint presentation, and it was detailed down to the point where the lines, as you change slides, should line up. Right, and I never thought about that when I was in school or through communications with my friends or colleagues of my same caliber. But as you're talking to more senior leaders, you need to find ways to be more succinct in your communications and be more crisp, and professionalism is key, and that was something that I learned early on. Another example that I'll share with you guys, Dow works across borders. We're truly a global company, but we truly actually operate globally as well. So one of my first roles in Dow is a mobility partner responsible for moving people internationally into the U.S. for Dow. And I had 2 people that I was moving for my first 2 moves. One was coming from the Netherlands, and one was coming from Asia. And I shared the same information with both people, and I thought that my communication was perfect because I got really good feedback from both. But what I didn't realize was some people don't share, and some cultures don't share, if they're confused or if they don't necessarily understand what you had shared with them. So my person from the Netherlands, they moved over and they were fine, but the person from Asia had a lot of questions and concerns, but they never shared them with me. So we found them out later, and that was a huge learning experience for me to really make sure that as I'm communicating with other people, especially other people from other cultures, to ensure that I'm taking the time to ask the questions to make sure that people are understanding what I'm trying to get across. So.
In the audience, please feel free to raise your hand and ask a question at any time.
So that was one of my first roles and one of the first things that I did. So I actually found out the hard way, right? So I'm thinking that things are going great and everything's going smoothly, and along the way, issues continue to arise and with the person's move. And it was after a couple issues had come up that I realized that some of the things that I thought that I originally shared weren't clear. So it was more going through the painful process of trying to resolve issues along the way, which led to me understanding that there were issues in my communication style with that person. I learned from that, and I used those learnings to change my style for future types of situations like that. But that first one, I was learning the hard way. It was painful for both of us.
And I can piggyback off of Steve's example because I've worked with overseas vendors a lot, especially in fixed equipment environment. And as a new hire coming into a company, there's always someone who's had that experience and who's already learned that lesson. Mm-hmm. So use that to your advantage and find someone who's built these relationships with these vendors or your colleagues overseas, and talk to them in advance and say, hey, what are some things I should try? And you'll learn that there are some tricks to help you navigate effective communication. One example I learned early on was following up verbal communications with emails, because in some cases they may understand you perfectly, but to communicate it back to you may not be as easy, but they can articulate in writing far clearer than they may feel comfortable articulating verbally. So there are other means of communication and pulling information when you don't feel as though it's coming to you freely.
So in other words, would you say that diversity adds almost like another challenge or another barrier, or in some ways does it open the floor for a more comfortable situation to be able to communicate?
Absolutely opens the floor for really innovation, effective collaboration. Diversity brings so many perspectives to the table. It brings every perspective to the table. So the heart to it is not finding it to be a challenge, but really exploring how you would want to be heard or how you may want to be treated, and giving others the same respect. And if you feel as though there's a possibility that people aren't able to fully express themselves, then it's almost your responsibility to go after whatever that information may be and build that relationship so that everyone can collaborate at their fullest potential.
And I think the statistics are there, right? Companies that are diverse perform better than companies that are not. And that even includes millennials in the workplace. Because you think about it, most millennials grew up on cell phone technology and rapid technological advancements, right? Mm-hmm. So being in the workplace and being able to bring that experience into a workforce of other generations that have been there longer, that didn't grow up in the same background, help the companies move along, right? Because there might be things that people thought of in the past that through your education you might know that we do not even know, even though we are not so many years removed from school. So diversity is a really key enabler in the enterprise.
I would say one of the challenges that I've seen with people coming in to the workplace for the first time is finding the balance, right? Because I think John made a great point, but you need to balance bringing those fresh ideas with listening as well, because some people have been in some of these plants that you might go into for 25, 30 years. They know how the plant's going to run, utilizing their knowledge and experience, but bringing your fresh perspectives to the table and finding that balance. That's where the true benefit lies. We are bringing in new people, fresh college grads, for your knowledge, for your new ideas, for you to come and challenge the status quo. So we don't want you to come in and just accept the status quo for what it is either, but at the same time, I think listening is a critical skill set for anyone new. If you don't come in and spend the time to listen to your colleagues, learn from your colleagues, it will hurt your credibility right out of the gate, and that's hard to get back. Spending the time to learn a little bit more about the culture, the dynamics, what's going on in the workplace, how have we done things in the past, how can we then maybe improve things? That's where the value that you can bring really lies, I would say.
And I think he made it right? So new hires usually have new ideas, right? And people have been there, they've done it. So that's where you merge the two. What's the risk? Which is people that have had that experience can tell you what the risk of what your plan is. and then what the actual optimal path is. So again, to his point, you get to definitely listen to people and then communicate. Interpersonally, again, it comes back to understanding who you're communicating with. So as a new hire, one thing you really want to know is, how does my boss like to be communicated with? Does he want to be CC'd on everything that's happening, right? There are some bosses that are very on top of things. They want to know everything that's going on. There are some that would say, just send me a bullet point at the end of the week of what you're working on, that's okay, bi-weekly. But everybody's different, so we can't generalize. And that's why we don't want to put everybody in a millennial as they do this, or somebody that's a generation X or Y as having to do this. We need to pick individual people's tendencies and act accordingly.
Awesome. So from you all's experience at Dow, were there any key differences that you picked up on intergenerational communication?
So can I take?
Go for it.
I mean, I'm an email person as well for work, and I like very short emails. So if you write too long of an email, I feel like you don't really know what you're talking about, because you should be able to summarize, because everybody gets a ton of email. So my thing is, if I can summarize in 2 or 3 sentences, I need to do a better job of communicating that verbally to a person when I catch up to them. So that's been the key of how do you summarize quickly so people know what you need to do. Other communication methods, if it takes more than 2 or 3 lines, it means it needs a meeting, right? So get everybody on the call, get everybody's viewpoint, and then summarize it after that so everybody is clear. Okay, so depending on the situation, you need to be able to adapt again to what you're trying to achieve and what the outcome is, and communicate clearly so that there's no misunderstanding. As Steve said, you think you send a message across, but people don't really understand what you meant.
Yeah, some more tactical things that I've noticed. One of the first things that I picked up on when I first joined the workforce was I found a lot of the more senior people at Dow like to leave voicemails. I was never a voicemail person ever in my life, right? I never left a voicemail for anybody. Like if I called you and you didn't answer, I expected you to call me back because you saw that you had a missed call from me. That's not necessarily the case for everyone. So I was learning that I would call people and not leave them a voicemail, and then they'd never get back to me. And I always wondered why. And I would ask them, like, so did you see that I called you? And they're like, yeah, but you didn't leave me a voicemail, so I didn't think it was important. So again, like I think that's one of the little nuances that you see in the workforce. Utilization of technology is another thing. So a couple of years ago, we started to implement a program that was more of like an internal social media program called Yammer. Right. We use Yammer quite a bit now, and I would say that there's been different levels of adoption of Yammer and how you use Yammer. To John's point, some people post books on Yammer, and some people use it for 1 or 2 sentences just to educate somebody on something that happened. So I think learning it from other people and how they use technology is something that I've found as well in my short time with Dow.
The wonderful thing about working for Dow, in my experience, is that we have a very warm culture and a very versatile culture. So people who are able to pick up, I mean, there's versatile communication preferences just between the 3 of us. Mm-hmm. But if you are able to identify that in everyone that you work with individually, and also be versatile within yourself to modify your personal preferences and come outside of your comfort zone to accommodate some of the people you will have to interact with, mm-hmm. It will promote success in what you're working on.
Yeah, and on that point, I've totally changed my personal style. I leave voicemails for everything, and if somebody doesn't leave me a voicemail, I don't call them back. I would say our culture is extremely warm to new folks coming in. I actually remember my first day at Dow because one of our VPs in the HR function came into my office, sat down, and just had a conversation with me. I had no idea who she was at the time, but she came into my office on my first day, sat down with me for 20 minutes, and just had a conversation. And I found from that point forward, her door was always open for me, and I've always had that kind of relationship with people that were more senior than me, more junior than me, and that's just part of our culture. I think that we're very supportive of everyone, but especially new hires, because everyone wants to see you be successful when you come into Dow. We have a lot of work that we're always trying to do. We're always overwhelmed. So if we're not working with each other to make sure that we're maximizing our time and making sure that everybody is pulling their weight to the best of their ability, that's just going to lead to more stress in our personal life. So our culture from my 6 years at Dow has been amazing in that sense. Very supportive, challenging for sure. You're going to get opportunities where you might not feel like you're ready for it, but the support of the culture around you will enable your success, and I've found that for my entire tenure so far.
I think people at Dow are welcoming, right? So when I joined Dow, people reached out to me, telling me where I could get a haircut, right? Where I could go in the community. But these are things that you don't think about joining a community, right? And it makes a difference of where you work, because at the end of the day, you're going to stay there long term. Putting me in touch with people. So they're open to new people coming in, and they're almost willing to share more than they should sometimes even share, right? And it all comes with your attitude as well. If you're humble and you come in and you show that you're willing to learn, I think people are willing to show you as much as you can and be able to stretch you. So I think it's a two-way street. You have to be humble enough to know that you don't know everything, and they also know that they don't know everything, because at the end of the day, you're going to teach them something, and they're also going to learn from you as well. So it's a little bit of a give and take.
Nice.
And that goes back to that listening point that I was trying to make earlier. If you go in and you are humble and you listen to the folks that are working with you, you'll learn so much from them, and they'll want to show you more and teach you more, and they bring you into the family. So it's important to come in, get to know people, build those relationships. Relationships at Dow and probably any other large company are critical foundational skills for you to build, to leverage, to have a successful career. So take the time to build those relationships, get to know people, get to understand some of their communication styles. Ask about yours as well. Am I being an effective communicator? That's a great question to ask. Be open to the feedback, and it'll go a long way for you.
Mm-hmm. And speaking to your point about being humble and coming in with the eager to learn mindset, what would you say are some of the differences between the generational work efforts that we have? Like, what are some of the issues that we have with that, between the different work efforts that we have between different generations?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start and feel free to jump in, but I would say a lot of the generational differences in like work ethic to me are more, this is my personal opinion, but they're more stereotypes, right? I don't think that millennials or Gen Zs work any more or any less than any of the other generations. I think that's a negative stigma that's tied to that generation because maybe the work style is a little bit different. You know, we were talking earlier today, but for someone in our generation, we're used to being able to be flexible with when and where we work, right? Just being physically present in the office isn't the only place where we get work done. I think some of the stigma comes from maybe an older school mentality around physically being present in the office. And to me, if we can work together to dispel some of those notions around the generational differences with work ethic, I think that would go a long way for us, because it does definitely carry over into the workplace. There are stigmas, they do exist, people do believe some of these things, and the way that you can overcome that is to deliver results. At the end of the day, results speak for themselves. It doesn't matter to me, for people on my team, if they're physically in the office for 40 hours a week or if they're working from home. To me, that doesn't matter. It's about the results that they deliver at the end of the day, and that's where all of our credibility comes from. Results speak for themselves, and that will help dispel any notion around generational differences in work ethic.
So managing upwards is a bit tricky. So communication is very critical when you are looking to give constructive feedback or genuine feedback to someone such as your leader or someone who you perceive to be at a higher level than you are. And the key to that is really, I would say, one, being prepared, knowing the message that you are intending to communicate. Two, being respectful. There is no substitute for pure respect for an individual, regardless of their title or level. So anyone you would want to give feedback to, you would need to bring that to the equation. So what I would suggest would be to have that mentor or that coach that you can go to and have that conversation with them first and ask them for feedback on how you should approach it with a leader or whomever you're looking to give that type of feedback to. Because as long as you carry your communication well, a good leader will receive it.
I do agree with your comment around practicing, though. Like, have your message prepared, practice it, because being able to effectively get your point across is half the battle, right? That's you controlling what you can control. Their reaction to the feedback is outside of your control, but know that if you can kind of hone your message and make sure that you're well versed in what you want to get across, that'll go a long way with at least the front end of that equation. Again, I would go back to results, because I don't personally measure work ethic on my team by how many hours they put in. You could work 80 hours or you could work 40, but if you deliver the same results, I'm happy. Doesn't matter to me how many hours you're putting in. When it comes to like the team's morale and working with each other, you can usually tell, like, if somebody's feeling alienated or not a part of the team. I try to spend as much time physically with my team as I can. I don't sit in the same location as my team, like they sit a hallway away, but I spend the time to walk over and just talk with people and see how people interact with each other. So a lot of those conversations, I'm not just having a one-on-one conversation with one person. I'm trying to gauge the rest of the group and how they're interacting with each other. And constantly ask, right? I ask every single person on my team in every one-on-one that I have. I make it a part of my conversation with them to ask them how things are going within the team. I have a pretty large team, so at some point somebody tells me if something's not going right, and I think the important thing is, because it's not always going to be perfect, right? Your team's always going to have some kind of issue going on somewhere. It's work, right? There's stressful environments. There's different personality styles. Not everybody's always going to mesh, but I think when you find those issues and when they finally come up, I think the important thing as a leader is to make sure that you address them, and address them effectively and quickly, so you can maintain credibility with the rest of your team, because everyone's watching you as a leader. All of your people they know what's going on. They know before you know if something's wrong in the organization, and they're watching to see how you're going to react when that gets brought to your attention. So I think the important thing is being respectful of the team, but also being quick to take action when you need to.
I'll put a spin on that one because I work in the plant environment, and I have a number of inspection and testing technicians that do work for me. So not the same as Steve's approach. The number of hours a week actually matter, because most of these guys are actually could be called out 7 days a week, and at any time they may need to be in the field working to keep our plants operating. So productivity is an important metric to our company and to our organization, to really ensure that we're making the most efficient use of our time and using the resources that we have wisely, so that we are not overworking and overstressing them, which is a challenge in itself. But with that, I would say, as he alluded to, it's the engagement and talking to various members of the team to get their perspectives, because everyone has their own opinion. But I typically don't have to really gauge work ethic. We hire what we believe to be the best and brightest talent in the world. So we expect that from anyone that we bring into Dow, but it's your team who's watching you, and it's your colleague and the person next to you who's going to recognize when you're slacking, because they're going to carry the load to make sure that the team is successful. So as a leader, I don't feel the need to really patrol work ethic across the range of generations that have worked for me. Honestly, the results speak for itself, and the teams can really self-manage that. And if you talk to your team members enough, it'll come to you, and you'll be able to pick it up and address it accordingly.
And I'd say you're only as good as your weakest link, right? So I look at how do you help people on the team achieve the results, right? And that means people that are above you and below you, and how do you make everybody better, right? Because if you're helping everybody else, that tells me that you're looking to solve the problem and you're not just taking the credit for it, right? So how can you, within a team environment, be able to help others do the best work possible and not you carry the load by yourself? So if you bring in a problem, come up with other possible solutions to the problem and not just come up. So I think those little nuances help identify those that are actually looking to solve the problems and not just bringing the problems to the surface.
Earlier, Steve, you spoke on stereotypes and how that can affect a work style or your perception of a work style. I know as millennials, there is a stigma or a negative perception of our work style as well. What would you say are some of the ways to avoid these stereotypes and also to not practice unconscious bias?
So I was going to say, some of the stereotypes I've heard is most millennials want to run the company in 5 years. Okay? And the traditional way in corporate America is you've got to put in your time, right? If you think about Dow Chemical Company, it's a $60 billion company. It's a huge company, right? So you've got to understand all moving parts. But most people have gone to school and they think, well, I have an MBA, I've worked at a company before, and I should be vice president, right? And so that's some of the stereotypes that we hear, right? Mm-hmm. That we want to run the company, the next day we step foot on the campus, right? That doesn't work. And I think, but those do happen. To every rule, there's an exception. I think the way you get those opportunities or break those stereotypes is, again, the work ethic and showing results, as Steve said, right? If you continue to provide the results that the company is expecting, no matter where you are, I think that would carry you through. Because if every assignment you're given, you perform well, I think you'd get the next tough assignment and it will stretch you out. So that's one of the stereotypes. The other part is I think we're always on our cell phones, so we always get distracted in meetings. Yeah. So I know millennials can sit through an hour presentation without getting on their phones. So I think you guys have done great. I don't see anybody on the phone. But those are some of the stereotypes that we do hear a lot about. But at the end of the day, we can't always bracket. I think that's how I started these conversations. We can't bracket people into segments, right? So there'll be stereotypes, but it's on us to change those perceptions on both sides.
Yeah, and I would say, maybe back to the first point, you can break them by building like individual relationships with people. So when I came into Dow, I came into a role that was probably a little bit more higher level than like a typical entry level position, and people assume that got handed to me, and I struggled with like that perception at first. It's the reality of it, and some of you guys will experience this as well, but I struggled with people having a perception of me that something got handed to me and I didn't work hard to get it, because I did. I put the time in school. I made something of myself, and I was proud of the opportunities that I had. So coming into that experience, at first I wasn't prepared for that type of reaction. But at the same time, I think what I started with was trying to look at it from their perspective. Some of the people that were in that first work group that I worked in that specific work group for over 20 years, and they had never gotten the experience that I got. And I had just walked on site at Dow for one day. So if you turn it around and put yourself in their shoes, you can see from their perspective how they could potentially take an issue with someone coming fresh out of college into a more higher level role than maybe they're in. But again, I think going back and starting to build those relationships with people is so important, because you can overcome those types of stereotypes by not only delivering, but working with people and showing them who you really are as a person and how you got to that point. I would say since that first experience, I've been able to really hone in on my network and build that network to an extent now where I don't feel like I get that reaction when I go into roles that I'm going into now. I have, in all reality, if you look at like the years of experience that I have in the role that I'm in, I shouldn't be in this role, right? But I think people are okay with seeing my name show up on an org chart in a role that I'm in because I've built those relationships and I've proven that I can deliver. And that's why I'm getting these opportunities, and not because I'm a overprivileged person or something like that. So what I would say, going back to the beginning, is go in, know that other people may feel a certain way about you getting some sort of opportunity that maybe they thought that they should have gotten. See it from their perspective, and then work with them to bridge that gap and build that relationship, and it'll carry you a long way.
A lot of times, effective communication isn't just limited to our words and us speaking. Sometimes it can really come from our body language and the cues that we're giving off from, things, interactions without words. So what would you say are some of the ways that we can overcome this and avoid this as well?
I'd say be positive every day because every day is an interview, right? You don't know who you're talking to or who will be your boss the next time. So if you complain about something at work, mind you, in 10 years, that person might remember it when your name comes up for a decision. Because the story is told by one of our executives of walking in the parking lot and some guy complaining about how horrible his day was, right? And he complained, met him in the coffee area, and the guy complained again. 10 years later, his name came up for a position, and he was denied the job because he remembered it and said this guy would complain about this role if he was complaining about the other role. So take every day as an interview. If you're having a bad day, somebody else is having a worse day than you are, right? And so just keep it positive. If you want to complain to yourself when you go home, look yourself in the mirror, whatever it takes, but do not complain to anybody at work. That's my personal piece of advice.
Great advice.
Spin I'll put on it is just be able to self-reflect and understand yourself. So I know I have no facial control. It's a weak area of mine. So in a meeting, sometimes my face will reflect exactly what's going on in my head. And I was actually in a training session once, and it was an exercise where you couldn't speak, and you had to try to figure out what someone was trying to describe to you and draw it. So the feedback I got from that was that I looked angry or mad or something to that effect, and actually I just couldn't figure out if I needed to go left or right and if it was a circle or a square, and I was really just trying hard. So your face or your body language may or may not reflect the message that it is communicating, and understanding those things, your tone, the rate of speech that you're using as you verbalize communication, bold fonts and colors. So, understanding how things are received by other people and how you are perceived by others can really influence positively the effectiveness of your communication.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate that point because, self-reflection is critical when it comes to this. Like Teeny here, my body language, I'm very self-aware of my body language. I know that my facial expressions don't always share what I'm feeling. I purposefully make myself smile. I don't smile all that often. It's just my style, but I force myself to do it. And I know that if I'm involved in a conversation that I need to be engaged in, I know that I'm more relaxed in nature. It's just my personality style. So if I'm in a conversation that I need to actively be engaged in, I purposefully make myself sit up, get closer to the person, and actively engage with my body language as well. I force myself to do it. So the reason why I do that is because I've gotten feedback in the past around being relaxed. So self-reflection, learning yourself, learning what people perceive of you is important to know, so that way you can address it and alter your style to be able to reflect the situation that you're in. I got a good one here. So my first job, I go back to that first job. So I graduated from grad school with a HR and labor relations degree from West Virginia University. And I had high hopes to go into what we call like an HR generalist position. And my first role was in mobility, which was moving people internationally for Dow. And I learned absolutely nothing about mobility in college. I didn't even necessarily think it was a part of HR, so I was not happy with that opportunity. And I shared that with my boss. I was pretty open with her about, like, I shouldn't be here, like I should be doing something else, something more relevant to my educational background, and here's what I would like to do, and I think that this would be a better opportunity for me. And basically was told to be patient, and give it a chance. And honestly, like, I look back, I spent 12 months in that rotation. And I learned so much about it, but it took me probably 6 months just to like get over like the mental hurdle of not wanting to necessarily be in that specific group. But now I look back on it, I went through 3 rotations while I was in our rotational program, and that one taught me the most about HR, it taught me the most about people, and it taught me the most about the company. And I've used that experience to springboard my career, and I wouldn't be in the position that I'm in today if it wasn't for that. So my advice to you is if you get into a position like that, make the most of it, right? Any opportunity, especially early on in your career, is a learning opportunity and a foundational skill building opportunity for you. So even if you're not totally passionate about it, learn something from it and take something away from that to build a career upon. So spark one with me.
I would say give it a chance, right? So I look at the role that I'm presently in. Was it a role that I wanted to do? Yes, right? So when I was approached to do the role, I wanted to do the role, right? But on the people side, the group of people that I was going to work with was an expansion of my current role. I didn't think we could fit personally. Again, you work with these people all day, so you want to make sure that you mesh with them. So I remember my boss asking me what would keep me up at night, and me saying if I didn't get along with the people that work with me, it would make it hard for me to show up to work, because I'll show up to work just checking a box, right? And 3 months in, I actually told her, I think a month or two, and it's way better than I thought it would have been. So I went in with a preconceived idea of what it was going to be, but then the reality once I got into the job was way better than I actually thought. So sometimes I think you might say you don't like it, looking out, but always give it a chance, right? And if it doesn't work, then you look into it, but never go into a situation where you already have made up your mind, as you mentioned earlier, unconscious bias of what you think it's going to be.
Declining offers is something that you guys are going to have to experience, and it's not easy to do, and it's not comfortable doing it. But I would say the best thing that you can do is just be open and transparent with companies as to what your decision is and why you're making the decision. You don't need to go into a ton of detail, but what you don't want to do is kind of, I would say, beat around the bush around it. Like be straight with companies. Tell them, hey, I have other offers that have either higher salary or better culture, better fit for me, better location, whatever it is. Companies will understand. You're not going to offend people by declining the offer. We know, coming from talent acquisition, I know that the market is extremely competitive right now. Students coming out of school with engineering degrees in particular have a lot of opportunities presented to them, and it's picking the best opportunity for you, and that's just a decision that you need to make for yourself and for your life going forward. And I think if a company can't respect that, it's probably not the place that you wanted to be either. So long story short, I would say be open, be transparent about it, be straight with them, and you'll be fine. But definitely take the time to give some feedback too if you feel comfortable doing that, because that helps companies make better decisions on how they approach recruiting and the offers that they have as well. So we want the feedback, we value the feedback, and we'd be happy if you shared it. So I know it's uncomfortable, But if you feel comfortable enough to share more information, it definitely goes a long way.
The only thing I'd add to that is if you are going to decline, do so in a timely fashion. So typically you're given a response time, and the only wrong way to decline an offer is to do so the day before your start date, or in a manner such that you're not respectful of their time. That would be the only thing I'd add to that.
I guess another piece of advice would be, if you do accept offers, do your best to honor the commitment. Sometimes things come up, right? And it happens. Personal issues come up, and there's nothing that you can do about it. But I think if you can do your best to honor the commitments that you make, it goes a long way for your credibility. Even if you get a better offer somewhere down the road, I think backing out of a commitment is probably one of the most damaging things you can do to your reputation, because if you wanted to go back to that company at some point, that doesn't get forgotten. So if you do make a commitment to a company, I would encourage you to honor that to the best of your ability. But at the same time, we also know that personal things come up and things happen. So.
And I would say if there's one time that you can be selfish, that's the time you can be selfish during the job search, right? Because at that time, it's about you and what works for you, right? Companies like Dow and any other company will do our best to court you. But at the end of the day, it's what works best for you. Because if you join us and you're not happy about it, chances are you will leave a short time after, right? So that's the time for you to really consider and say what drives you. Is it money? Is it location? Is it family? Everybody's going to be different, right? You might take a less pay to be closer to a job situation that puts you right next to your family, right? And so in the roles that you guys are pursuing, anybody can make you a very competitive offer, as he said, right? But it comes down to what you want out of it. Is it the value system of the company? Is it the culture? And what drives you? So if there's a time, take your time to reflect on it. And once you've made that decision, just communicate to the employer why you chose not to join them, but in a respectful way.
Yeah, and on that point, I would encourage you guys to, as you're going through the interviewing process, go into it with some knowledge of what is important to you. You know, take the time to sit down and think about some of those things that John mentioned. So what drives you and what is critical to you, and even come up with some sort of scale to rate the different types of offers you're going to have, because you're more than likely going to have more than one. So if you can evaluate those in any way, shape, or form and balance them against each other and balance them against what matters to you, you can make the best decision for you. So take the time to do that up front. It'll go a long way for you when you have that difficult decision to make somewhere down the road.
I'm actually going to ask one last question. So, for example, at Dow, what type of training exercises do you guys practice to achieve effective communication? And what would you say are some of your biggest takeaways and biggest piece of advice you could give to us tonight?
Yeah, so I'll start. So Dow, at Dow, we practice a model where 70% of your learning happens through your job. 20% of the learning would happen through others, so like having a mentor or learning from somebody else, and 10% of your learning would happen through more of like a course or a training, instructor-led or self-led training. So most of what you're going to learn is through just your job. So you collaborate and communicate with people every single day. You're going to learn through those opportunities working with other people on how you can improve your communication skills and your collaboration skills. We do also obviously encourage mentors as well, so those are people that you can go to that are a little bit more of a safe person that maybe you don't work with every day, that you can bounce some things off of and get some feedback, and we would definitely encourage you to do that. And then last, we have training. So I facilitated a training for a number of years on navigating beyond conflict, and that was all about communication gaps with people. So we do offer those trainings as well. Those are things that we have available for all of our employees to take. It's through our learning management system, so we have a number of courses that you can take at your leisure. We have courses that you would actually go into a classroom setting and learn with other people. But we have numerous resources out there to help anyone who's struggling in this space or just wants some additional coaching or tips, and we highly encourage people to do that.
And in addition to those courses mentioned, such as effective communication skills, we do have Toastmasters, right, which is a program that you can join during your lunch hour if you have issues with public speaking, hone that skill, right, that's available to employees. And then also we do have what we call, employee resource groups. And that gives you an avenue to be able to speak in front of people, get leadership skills, communication skills outside your work group, right? So you can think about African American Network, Women in Innovation Network, Veterans Network, whatever you want to affiliate with, they give you the opportunity to be a member, but also take on roles where you can communicate and build that confidence that you need to communicate with others. So.
And one of the things you mentioned earlier was unconscious bias. So as Dow is striving to really ensure that we are promoting an inclusive work environment so that everyone can feel comfortable being 100% of themselves every day that they come to work, we have training courses such as unconscious bias to really help people to understand the things that they are not aware of in their thinking, to make sure that they are not blocking opportunities to engage other perspectives in their daily work environment. And one of the most powerful training courses that we have was, at least for me, was Building Relationship Versatility, which is really focusing on teaching the students in that course the different social styles that they can approach or end up approaching in a work environment, and how to modify either your communication style or even how to be more receptive to other communication styles in the workplace. So it's really teaching you that there's a difference between relationship tension and task tension. Relationship tension is not the type of tension that you really want in a team or work environment, because if you're struggling just to interact with individuals, you're not focused on the task at hand or what you can achieve by working together. Whereas task tension is positive tension, because that's when you're stimulating ideas and tossing back and forth to really try to hone in on what is the best answer for whatever solution you guys are working on. So understanding that tension is okay and understanding how to approach it in a group of varying personalities, generations, you name it, what makes us a diverse company is really how you achieve inclusion in the workplace, which is the key to any business success.
The work at Dow truly sounds amazing.
It is.
Again, I just want to thank you for your time tonight. Thank you for speaking with us. And again, a huge thanks to NACME as well for joining us this evening at our institution.
Outstanding. Can we give our panelists and moderator a round of applause? We'd like to sincerely thank the Dow Company for bringing this very important topic to our attention. Research shows that 30% of executives stated that communication skills are the greatest differences among their company's employees who are from different generations. Baby boomers are known to be more reserved. Baby boomers are born between 1940 to 1960, so that would be your grandmother, right? Generation X prefer control and command style. Generation X is considered those born between mid-60s to the 80s. Millennials prefer a more collaborative approach to communication. So the group approach is definitely more relevant to the millennial generation. So this topic is extremely important. I heard some really great takeaways today. One, that Steve learned on the job, leave a voicemail. Did you guys get that?
It's important.
I have students in the millennial generation that will not leave a voicemail, and they get mad that I don't return a phone call because they know I saw that missed phone number. Practice your communication, particularly when you're managing up. Work ethic, despite the stereotype, is the same across generations. It's all about outcomes. You're not going to run a company in 5 years. We talked about that in the earlier session, okay? Even if you have an engineering degree and an MBA, you have to put in the time. And the one biggest takeaway I heard is be positive every day. Every day is an interview. So I thank you for taking time today to come out and hear this very important topic. I hope you too had some key takeaways. This was a phenomenal event for NACME and Dow, and I'd like to thank North Carolina A&T State University Aggie Pride for hosting us today. Thank you very much. Can I get
an Aggie Pride?
Aggie Pride. And with that, thank you and good night.